The crowd around him was silent. Dust floated in the afternoon light. The sun beat down on polished stone as Jesus of Nazareth stood facing the heart of Jewish life, the temple in Jerusalem. Towering, glorious, unshakable. Then he said the words that no one could believe. "Do you see all these great buildings? Not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down." People laughed. Some scoffed. Others were deeply unsettled. The temple wasn't just a building. It was the building, the center of worship, the beating heart of Jewish identity. It had withstood wars, sieges, time, and stood now under the iron fist of the Roman Empire. Destroy it? Impossible. But Jesus didn't blink. He didn't hedge. He said it clearly, it would all fall. His followers were confused. His enemies rolled their eyes. But 40 years later, the laughter stopped. In 70 AD, Roman legions under General Titus marched on Jerusalem. The city fell. The temple burned. Its gold melted into the cracks between the stones. The soldiers, following orders, dismantled it completely, one block at a time. Just like he said. No central structure. No sacred altar. No Temple Mount sanctuary. It was gone. Wiped from the earth. Historians recorded the horror. Archaeologists later found the ruins. And today, nothing remains of the temple itself, only the western wall, part of its retaining foundation. Jesus predicted it before any rebellion had begun. Before the war. Before the politics. When peace still reigned. How could a carpenter's son, without military power or influence, foresee the destruction of the most sacred site in his religion? And why has modern science confirmed that the timeline works? Some call it coincidence. Others say it's divine. But everyone agrees on one thing. The prediction checks out. And it changed everything. First-century Jerusalem was no ordinary city. It was fire and faith, politics and prophecy, the eye of every storm in the ancient world. Towering over its hills stood the Second Temple, the crown jewel of Jewish civilization. Rebuilt and expanded by King Herod decades earlier, it wasn't just massive. It was majestic. Gleaming white stone. Golden accents that caught the sun and blinded from miles away. Walls that seemed to scrape the sky. For Jews, it was more than architecture. It was where God lived. Pilgrims traveled from across the empire just to see it, to offer sacrifices, to stand in awe. The Temple Mount became the beating heart of Jewish spiritual identity, and the most fiercely protected holy site in the world. To say it would be destroyed was unthinkable. And yet, under the surface, cracks were forming. Rome ruled Judea with iron. Their presence was brutal. Their taxes suffocating. Their banners, symbols of pagan gods, felt like desecration. And every time a Roman official strutted into town, resentment boiled closer to the surface. The people were restless. Prophets and zealots filled the streets. Rumors of rebellion spread like wildfire. And into this powder keg walked Jesus. Not with swords, but with stories. Not with armies, but with questions. He spoke of a kingdom, not of Rome, but of heaven. He challenged religious elites. He warned of coming judgment, not just for individuals, but for the nation. His words pierced through the noise. Some followed. Others plotted to silence him. But one prediction stood above the rest. The temple, this wonder of the ancient world, would fall. Not in part. Not over time. Not one stone will be left on another. And still, no one believed him. Because how could a man with no army, no throne, no leverage, make such a claim? If the temple stood for anything, it was permanence. But Jesus saw something the world didn't. Not just the politics. Not just the patterns of history. Something deeper. Something inevitable. And 40 years later, the world would watch that impossible prophecy unfold, stone by stone. They stood in awe. The disciples couldn't stop staring, and who could blame them? The temple wasn't just sacred. It was overwhelming. Some of its foundation stones were the size of trucks. Its walls towered nearly 150 feet high. Gold panels lined the exterior, catching the morning sun like fire. It was a structure built to last forever. And Jesus, quiet beside them, said something that didn't make sense. "Do you see all these things? Truly I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down." The air went still. What was he saying? This wasn't symbolic language. He wasn't talking about spiritual decay or religious corruption. He was being specific. Brutal. Physical. Total destruction. The disciples were stunned. This was the center of their faith. The place God had chosen. The idea of its fall was more than tragic, it was apocalyptic. They followed him to the Mount of Olives, still reeling, and asked him, "When will this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Jesus didn't dodge the question. He told them what was coming: false messiahs, wars, betrayals, persecution. But the warning that echoed loudest was the one that started it all. The temple will fall. No time frame. No politics. Just certainty. And for generations, people mocked it. Scholars called it fear-mongering. Skeptics claimed it was added to the Gospels after the destruction. Some even said it was metaphorical, that Jesus didn't really mean the stones. But archaeology said otherwise. Because when the Romans finally came, the stones did fall. Exactly as he said. And in the layers of history, under ash and rubble, the evidence would one day be unearthed, confirming a prediction no one wanted to believe. It started as a rebellion. In 66 AD, fed up with Roman oppression, Judean factions exploded into open revolt. At first, it looked like a desperate last stand, but to everyone's surprise, they began winning. Roman garrisons were overrun. Cities fell. And for a moment, it seemed Jerusalem might actually break free. But Rome never forgets. And Rome never forgives. By 70 AD, they returned, not with a handful of soldiers, but with legions. Led by General Titus, son of the emperor, the Roman army surrounded Jerusalem. They cut off food, water, hope. Inside, chaos reigned. Factions fought each other. People starved. Some turned to cannibalism. And then, the walls were breached. The temple stood at the center of the chaos, still intact, still majestic, still burning with religious defiance. The Romans stormed the outer courts. Historians say a soldier, possibly by accident, hurled a torch into the temple. Flames erupted. The gold began to melt. Jewish fighters, desperate, tried to hold the ground. But the fire raged out of control. When the smoke cleared, Titus gave the order, "Dismantle it." Stone by stone. Because the melted gold had flowed between the cracks, and to extract it, the soldiers pried apart every block, every layer, until the temple was reduced to rubble. Not one stone left on another. Just like Jesus said. And as the last embers cooled, a new era began. The Jewish people were scattered. The temple was gone. And the heart of the ancient faith, the sacred meeting place between God and man, had been erased. Except for one wall. A retaining wall. A silent witness. Today, it's called the Western Wall, the only visible reminder that the temple ever stood. A tourist site. A place of mourning. A symbol. And beneath it all, a fulfilled prophecy. That no one saw coming. Except one man. Prophecies are easy. After the fact. That's what skeptics have argued for centuries. That the Gospels were written long after the destruction of the temple. That the authors simply inserted Jesus' prediction to make him look divine, retrofitted truth dressed up as foresight. But here's the problem. The timeline doesn't agree. The earliest Gospel, Mark, is believed by many scholars to have been written in the late 60s AD. Some even date it as early as 50 AD. That's before the temple fell. Before Jerusalem burned. Before anyone knew Rome was about to crush the city. If Jesus didn't actually say it, and the destruction hadn't happened yet, why write something so dangerously specific? It's one thing to make vague spiritual claims. But to say, not one stone will be left on another. That's either reckless or real. Archaeologists have confirmed it. Excavations along the Temple Mount have uncovered enormous stones, thrown from above, shattered as they landed in the streets below. The fire damage, the debris layer, the collapsed walls. It's all there, preserved in time like a snapshot of disaster. They didn't fall from age. They didn't collapse from earthquakes. They were deliberately dismantled, just as Jesus described. And that precision has left scientists scratching their heads. Because the destruction of Jerusalem was not inevitable in Jesus' time. In fact, most believed the temple would stand for centuries more. Jesus wasn't echoing public fears. He was predicting something unthinkable, in chilling detail. And modern science keeps confirming it. The stones fell. The fire came. The temple vanished. And history bent, silently, around the words of a man whose followers claimed he knew the future. Whether divine or delusional, he got it exactly right. Historians hate the word miracle. They prefer things they can measure, analyze, cite. So when they read Jesus' prophecy about the temple's destruction, and then compare it to the historical record, they face a dilemma. Because the language is too specific, too accurate, and most uncomfortable of all, too early. Dr. Bart Ehrman, a prominent New Testament scholar and skeptic, has admitted publicly. If the prophecy was truly made before 70 AD, it's hard to explain how Jesus could be so precise unless he really did say it. That's not a Christian apologist speaking. That's one of the most vocal critics of the Bible. Other scholars have danced around the question, calling it apocalyptic rhetoric, or suggesting Jesus had an unusually accurate political instinct. But none have found a satisfying explanation for the exactness of the prophecy. Not one stone left on another. Not damaged. Not captured. Not shaken. But dismantled, word for word, image for image. Coincidence? Maybe. But when the archaeology matches the text, and the timeline lines up, and the prediction is made before the war even begins, it's no longer just a religious claim. It becomes a historical puzzle. And it's not the only one. Because this isn't the only time Jesus said something improbable, and was right. In fact, it's just the beginning. And the further scientists dig, the more they realize. This man didn't just speak with conviction. He spoke like someone watching time from the outside in. The temple prophecy wasn't a one-off. Jesus made other predictions, strange ones, personal ones, dangerous ones. And one by one, they came true. He told his closest followers, "One of you will betray me." And before the night was over, Judas walked out of the shadows and into history. He told Peter, his boldest disciple, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." Peter swore it would never happen. Hours later, the words spilled from his mouth like reflex. Denial. 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 He told the group, "You will all fall away." They protested. But when the mob came, they scattered like smoke in the wind. But it didn't stop there. Jesus predicted his arrest, his public beating, his crucifixion. The Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests. They will condemn him to death, and hand him over to the Gentiles, to be mocked, flogged, and crucified. Every piece of it happened. Down to the method. Down to the Roman executioners. Down to the time frame. He said it would be soon. And it was. Even his resurrection, the most controversial claim of all, was something he didn't leave vague. Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. He wasn't talking about the building. He was talking about himself. So what do we do with that? A man makes dozens of predictions. Most of them specific. All of them risky. And many, historically, actually happen. Not maybe. Not spiritually. Physically. Publicly. Verifiably. Skeptics say he got lucky. That his followers retrofitted the Gospels. But the deeper historians dig, the more the details line up. And it raises the biggest question of all. If he was right about the destruction, if he was right about betrayal, if he was right about his death, then what if he was right about everything else? We live in an age of data. We trust satellites to track weather, algorithms to predict behavior, models to forecast markets. But when it comes to ancient prophecies, we get uncomfortable, especially when they come true, because it raises a possibility we're not trained to accept. What if someone really did know what was coming? Jesus didn't speak like a guesser. He spoke like someone certain. He didn't say, maybe. He said, truly, I tell you. And over 2,000 years later, historians and archaeologists are still trying to explain how he got so many things so right. Some call it coincidence. Others say the Gospels were edited. A few say Jesus was just unusually perceptive. But there's a growing number, even among non-believers, who admit, we don't really know how he knew. The destruction of the temple, the betrayal of his friends, the method of his death, the scattering of his followers, the persecution of his church, all spoken in advance. And in a time without media, surveillance, or political power, that's hard to fake. So maybe this wasn't just a man making bold claims. Maybe it was a voice from outside of time. A warning. A message. A glimpse. And if that's true, if Jesus really did see what was coming, not just in his lifetime, but in ours, then the next logical question is, what else did he say that we haven't seen yet? Because if even one of his prophecies came true, maybe the rest weren't metaphors. Maybe they were maps. Do you think Jesus really saw the future? Was it coincidence, or something more? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more stories where history meets the unexplained.